All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig in a Pickle Krug Show with a little Golden State Warrior video. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Warriors, but before we do, let's thank Pig in a Pickle, the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. And this video is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. I'm loving using Underdog Fantasy. Check that link in the description. Use the promo code KRUG, K-R-U-E-G, and they'll match you up to your first $100. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Warriors. Warriors look bad right now. They really do. I mean, they've got Draymond Green, who can't stay on the floor. You got Klay Thompson, who's a shadow of what he used to be. You got Andrew Wiggins, who just seems like he's going through the motions. You have Steve Kerr, whose lineup rotations don't seem to make any sense. You got young players like Kuminga and Moody and Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis, and I'm hearing their names connected to trade rumors when in reality those guys ought to be playing more. I mean, Kerr at this point ought to take the reserves and start them outside of Steph and take the starters outside of Steph and put them all on the bench and do it for 10 days and see if anything turns around. But let's talk a little bit about the Warriors, because behind all the Draymond stuff, behind all the Klay regression, behind all of it is Steph Curry. And Steph Curry is a great player, one of the greatest players in the history of the NBA. And what's clear is that Steph is going to have an elongated prime. He's going to stay in his prime for longer than Klay stays in his, and longer than Draymond stays in his. Steph may have a prime that goes on for, a amount of time that makes the continuation of their plan kind of murky. And ultimately, I think it really comes down to Steph's got a major decision looming. And that decision is, do you want to go to the finish line with the guys you came in with, and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson, or do you want to win a title? Because the odds that you can do both look like they're getting slimmer by the day. Draymond, has all kinds of issues and problems, and Klay Thompson's regressed significantly. Klay Thompson is not the player that he was pre-injury, and we've seen enough sample size to know that. So could he bounce back and be decent? Sure, but he needs to reinvent himself as a mid-range sniper and not think of himself as the three-point sniper that he used to be. Because of the injuries that he's had to the Achilles and to the ACL, he doesn't have his legs anymore. And so he can't roll into threes and shoot them effortlessly. He just can't. And it's really clear. I mean, he's hitting the side of the backboard. The other night he hit the bottom of the backboard on a three-point attempt. I mean, the bottom of the backboard. I mean, he's missing shots by 3 feet. So he still is a very pure shooter in the mid-range, but he's trying to find his glory days, and they're not there. So, Klay's kind of a broken player, and he's just so angry about it, and he's just getting madder and madder and madder, and it's killing the chemistry. I've never seen Draymond Green so mad and so angry. He's just angry at the world. He just slugged Nurkic for no reason at all, head slapped Nurkic. Draymond needs help. I mean, Draymond needs counseling. I mean, I agree with Nurkic, who basically said that guy needs help. And he does. He needs like an intervention. So that aside, I mean, Draymond's anger issues can be dealt with. Klay might be able to make some adjustments to his game. But ultimately, it really comes down to Steph Curry. The Warriors have said repeatedly they're not trading Klay Thompson. Which is interesting because I don't know that there's even a market for Klay Thompson, to be completely honest. Who's running to take a player who's a shadow of what he used to be, makes a ton of money, expects to continue to make a ton of money, and is not the player that he used to be that made him worth all that money? I don't know that there's a rush by any team in the league to have Klay Thompson, even in a trade. So for the Warriors to say, hey, we're not trading him, okay, that's fine. But does anybody want to trade for him anyway? But ultimately, it really comes down to Steph Curry. What's Steph's decision? Does Steph, and the thing is, people say, well, maybe the Warriors ought to trade Klay, or maybe they ought to trade Draymond. You're not making, this is the NBA in 2024. You're not making trades that send out, Klay Thompson or Draymond Green without getting the okay from Steph Curry. Steph Curry has enough clout with Joe Lacob where he gets to make that call. And so this all is on Steph's shoulders. So if tomorrow the Warriors traded Klay Thompson, I wonder if Klay Thompson and Steph Curry would remain friends. I mean, you got to wonder about that because, Klay will have known that Steph kind of signed off on a decision that sent him packing, and that could forever change their relationship. Same thing with Draymond's relationship with Steph. So ultimately, I think it really comes down to it. Obviously, we know that Steph wants both. He wants to go to the finish line with the Warriors. He wants to see Klay Thompson go to the finish line with the Warriors. He wants to see Draymond Green go to the finish line with the Warriors. And he wants to win another title. But as time goes on, it's looking more and more like that's not really going to be a possibility. They're not going to be able to win a title with all three of these guys in the twilight making the kinds of dollars they expect to make. The Warriors supposedly offered Klay Thompson a 2-year extension for $50 million, $25 million a year. To me, that's overpaying him by at least $5 to $10 million per year, but it sounds like they're willing to do it. Unfortunately, he's got such a high opinion of his game and what he deserves and who he is that he's going to look at 2 years and $50 million as an insult. So, they're in a really, really tough spot. They're in a really tough spot. Whatever they offer Klay that's in any way fair, he's going to view as an insult. Do you want him for the next 2 years after this year at terms that he feels insulted by? Probably not. There's a saying that it's easier to accept your decline in a different room than it is in the current room. That it's easier to go to a different team and become a role player than it is to stay on the team that you were once a superstar with and become that role player. So, these are going to be some really hard times for Golden State. They may be a playoff team. They may not be a playoff team. We're going to have to see what it looks like. They're not playing particularly well. All these other teams have grown up in the West. Minnesota's really good now. OKC's really good. New Orleans has a ton of talent. Sacramento's a young, improving team. And you got the Warriors who have some young talent, but Kerr doesn't want to consistently play them because he's so geared up to play the Klay Thompsons of the world. I don't know what to say about Andrew Wiggins. I mean, what do you do with Wiggins? He's made a ton of money. He's a good player. He's not hurt. He just kind of drifts. He's sometimes good. He's sometimes not good. He doesn't look all that assertive on the floor. He's one of their few guys in the prime of their career that needs to be a real assertive and kind of take more of a leadership role. And it seems like he's still kind of laid back Andrew, who's kind of easy breezy night after night. So the Warriors have tough decisions to make. They don't want to move Klay Thompson. I doubt they want to move Andrew Wiggins. They don't want to move Draymond Green. They're aging. They're wasting potentially the twilight years of Steph's Hall of Fame career. And ultimately, all roads lead back to Steph Curry. What does Steph want? Does Steph want, and if I was Joe Lacob, I'd pretty much do what he wants. If Steph wants to go to the finish line with Klay and Draymond and maybe never win another title, then maybe that's the route. If Steph badly wants to win a title, but doesn't need to go to the finish line with Draymond and Klay, maybe that's the route. You can't trade those guys without Steph's approval. You can't move on from Klay or from Draymond without the thumbs up from Steph Curry. Now, Bleacher Report has an article out right now talking about potential trades, and they're throwing out a trade here that I think does make some sense if you're in that mode of, man, you got to make a big move, but you can't move Clay and you can't move Draymond. They're proposing a trade where the Warriors would send Chris Paul's expiring contract and 2 future first-round picks to the Bulls for Nikola Vucevic, who's due to make 18.5 this year, and then he's got 2 more years for 24 and 25 at 20 million, and then for 25 and 26 at 21.4 million. And it would be Paul and 2 future ones, probably unprotected, to the Bulls for Nikola Vucevic and Alex Caruso. I don't know that the Bulls would do this deal, to be honest, because I think Caruso is enormously popular. They could probably get a better deal for Caruso, who's under contract this year for $9.4 million, and then has 1 more year under contract next year for $9.8 million for the 24-25 season. So we're in the 23-24 season right now, and you know, he's making 9.4. He'll make 9.8. These are totally great salary levels for a player of Caruso's talent. He's a really useful player. Lots of people love to have him. That's a screaming deal at $9.4 million. But I mean, that deal is a deal that I absolutely would make. I mean, if you want to keep Draymond and you want to keep Clay and you want to kind of keep your core intact and you want to try to, leverage the future a little bit without necessarily trading Trace Jackson Davis or Kuminga or Podziemski or Moody, which I would not advise to do. I don't think they ought to trade those guys. They ought to keep those guys. This would add a big man in Vucevic who can flat out shoot the perimeter shot, and he can shoot it from deep. And this would add a guy in Caruso who's a tremendous team player on offense, really good defender, team defender, and a versatile player. Both those guys could add quite a bit. Vucevic would give you a starting center and give you somebody who would complement Draymond Green, right? Because Vucevic can hit the outside shot. So he would give you a perimeter shooting big man to go with Green. You could also then play Kuminga at the 4 if you wanted. Trace Jackson Davis a little bit at the 4 if you wanted. Because they would all complement Vucevic, as that Vucevic has the outside shot and those guys are more inside players. And then Caruso is a big-time player that could be added immediately to the rotation. He's a little redundant because he's an awful lot like GP2, but Caruso is also a winning player who knows how to play well off of others and could play even with GP2 and just give you another defensive guard who really knows how to play. So, you can never have too many guys who know how to play defense and know how to play the game and pass and move off the ball. So I like the idea of Paul and 2 future ones for Vucevic and Caruso. It would add to your salary a little bit, though Chris Paul, because, Vucevic has 18.5 this year, but then 20 million next year and 21.4 in the year following that. And so you wouldn't have that $30 million of Paul's money expiring, and would probably push you further into the tax and into the apron and the repeater and all that, all the penalties that go along with that. So it would cost Joe some money for sure. But that is a trade that I think is very attractive. So ultimately, the Warriors, it's Mike Dunleavy's call, but it's really Steph's call. What does Steph want to do? Does he want to make a significant move involving Clay or Draymond? Or does he say, no, I want to keep those guys. I want to go to the finish line with those guys and figure out another way to do it. And if that's the case, and if this deal that the Bleacher Report is throwing out there is even plausible, that's the kind of deal they ought to make, of Chris Paul and 2 future number ones for Vucevic and Caruso. So these are going to be very interesting days ahead for Golden State, and it's all going to come down to one crucial decision from Steph Curry. Steph, your move. What do you want? You want Clay, you want Draymond, or you want a title? Because I don't know that you can have both. All right, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Appreciate Pig in a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this video as well. And check that promo code KRUG. Use the promo code KRUG in the in the promo code there, and you'll get your first $100 matched by Underdog. And thanks to all you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.